Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon and Friends podcast. I'm Simon Short. Joining me this week is Ben Parker. Ben, welcome in, man. How you doing?
I am doing so good. It is so good to be back with you, back with your audience, back with all the draft stuff, and we are loaded again. The draft is so close, as I know you're going to talk about, and it is really good to be here talking about it.
We are 1 week away, which means on my way down to the studio here, I was like, when am I going to squeeze in my annual watch of draft day? Because that's gonna happen. Maybe when I get tired of watching these last few defensive backs, I still need to scramble to get to. I'll take a little break and fire it up on the old Amazon. Um, But we're not here to talk about our watch plans here, Ben. We're here to talk about our draft plans because it is time for part four and the final installment of our 2026 NFL Draft War Room series. We have been through six total divisions so far. We're wrapping up our last two tonight. But before we do, haven't done this in a little while. I have a couple conversations, couple topics I want to get to with you now that we're a week out from the draft. The first one here is there's so many ways we could go with this, but I want to boil down to this because this would be new for us. It seems that everything's heating up and starting to sway in the position of David Bailey being the consensus expected pick to the New York Jets at number two overall. Now, this has long time been Arvel Reese's spot, essentially. After the combine, when everyone continued to fall more madly in love with Sonny Styles, it was Sonny Styles for a little bit, and then I think everybody kind of swung back to Arvel Reese. Um, but right now, between I think McShay mocked him there, I think Kuiper mocked him there in their mocks that came out today. But then just everything I am hearing and seeing, like it just seems like that Bailey is who the Jets are looking at too. Um, what do you think's the reason for this? I know what people are saying, but I want to know what you think the reason is in your brain. And then what do you think the fallout of that might be if David Bailey is the second overall pick to the New York Jets?
Yeah, it is fascinating. And if it were me and I were the Jets, I mean, I would have already made a decision. But as recently as 2 weeks ago, I would have been looking at four guys here, not one or two. I would have been looking at four. But we are hearing that it seems to be Bailey, and we won't know until draft night gets here, right? Because we've heard these things over the years, but
Hmm.
that wouldn't surprise me. So if that's the case, why? It really does feel like there's about three reasons here. Number one being that Bailey himself, you seem to know what you're getting with him. That's kind of what we've all been talking about for months, and we keep hearing from people. He's a blast as an edge rusher. He will get to the quarterback, and maybe he will or won't do the other things, but he'll do that.
Yeah.
And so that's not a thing that many guys in any draft can do, right? And everybody thinks they can at least get that out of him and get it in spades. So that's the one thing that's holding him up there. I will say I feel like the Bane has what's pulled Bane down has been the short arm thing for some teams, but also the off field stuff too.
Hmm.
I'm not saying it's going to yank him down to 20 because I don't think it is, but when you're trying to split hairs between these top blue chip type prospects, that can be enough to pull him out of the two or three spot, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the same thing going on with Arvell Reese, who everybody loves. He's special, he's explosive, but we're not totally sure what to do with him. And again, when you're splitting hairs, that can be enough to pull him down just a little bit. And it kind of leaves Bailey as the last man standing.
I'm double checking David Bailey's measurables here. Um, Yeah, I mean, he's not huge for an edge rusher, but 6'3" and 5/8, 251 pounds, 33 and 3/4 inch arm length, 10 and a quarter inch hands, 96 percentile and 40 yard dash and the broad jump. So with Bailey, the thing is you're just getting a not a finished product, but you said it, you know what you're getting. You're getting a prototypical get after the quarterback edge rusher. Right. And if the Jets are looking at themselves and saying, we need this defense to work this year, and we went out and we got the linebacker, and we went out and we have a second first round pick, we can get a corner there. We reshaped our defensive front in terms of, swapping out Jermaine Johnson for Devontae Sweat and that bringing in some defensive tackles and some big, like, rundown type edge rushers, Joseph Asai, Kingsley Enikbare, some veterans, some tough guys. But we need a guy with juice, right? We need a guy that's just going to get after the quarterback, who's going to get us off the field on third downs, who's going to give our offenses more chances. If they're not going to be a super efficient group, let's get them on the field a lot offensively. And let's do that by getting someone that we can just line up over the tackle and say, sick them, right? We don't have time, and this is to have people shoot themselves in the foot, but we don't have time to develop a converted linebacker to a full-time edge rusher,
Yeah.
right? We don't have time to take a full-time linebacker, let him play under next to Demario Davis for a year, and see the fruits of that labor of getting a skeleton key guy in the middle of the defense. Um, let's just get a guy that we could just say, get out there, and maybe with some strength and conditioning in the NFL over a couple of years, you'll become like an average run defender. But if not, whatever. I don't have to teach you to rush the passer because you could do that already.
Yeah.
And teams that have to think that way and think about immediate returns, like, it doesn't go well for. And I don't think we think it's going well for the Jets anyways, but that is what it seems like. And that's what the information is, right? David Bailey, like, we need this to work right now. We need some spark, someone to really get after the passer. Um, we made all these smaller moves. Let's go get the finishing piece for the defense, right? A year into coaching the defense, they need the finishing piece, but you're the Jets for a reason. Um, so what do you think the fallout of this is going to be? Because, when you do the mocks now, and anytime we did one, it was like Bailey was there at 8 to the Saints or 9 to the Chiefs or the Bengals or the Dolphins, right there in that range. And we would have Maui Noah or Fano going 3 to the Cardinals. If now the Cardinals are sitting here and they're like, okay, we need a right tackle, but holy smokes, Arvell Reese is right there. What, you can either tell me what would you do, or what do you think is going to happen now that Arvell Reese is kind of more available? Because when it was like just Sonny Styles or just David Bailey, it was one thing, but now Arvell Reese is like, this feels like the potential prize of the draft, and if he's there at 3, can we pass up on him for Maui Noah, who we think is going to be a good right tackle, but maybe not an all-pro right tackle?
Yeah, those kind of, I call them moral dilemmas. It really challenges your draft plans, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you put together a plan and you're like, let's be honest about what we need and what works for us. And then dang it, the order shakes up and like, wow, this is a special guy. This is not what we thought would be sitting here. Yeah, it was on our
Mm-hmm.
plans, but it was kind of plan number 7 here, and now it's shaking out this way. And we got 2 guys in the room who are pounding the table for him. It gets real hard to keep your draft integrity, right? It gets real hard
Yep.
to stick to the plan. For most teams, it won't change things too much. But the question is, yeah, the Cardinals or a team that might be tempted to trade up, does that start to shake things up, right? By itself, it may not change a lot, but if there's another move that goes with it, right? Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
tackles bumping down a couple of picks, or whether it's a team wanting to trade up, and all of a sudden the draft, it's like game on, the draft order has changed
Yep.
all of a
Yep.
sudden.
Yep.
Yes, that could start to really have quite a, what is it? The butterfly effect, the ripple in the
Yep.
pond effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it,
Mm-hmm.
it really could.
The trades, I think, is the big one. That's you're taking my brain down that path too, where maybe it's not the Cardinals are like, now we have to take Garvell Reese, but now maybe, because I did this in
Yeah,
our war room last week, where the Cardinals, I was like, trade down and pick up Fano, because even if you lose on Maui Noah, like, I think Fano's great.
right.
They need extra capital, blah blah blah. But now it's like, not only are teams maybe calling up for Jeremiah Love or Sonny Styles, but maybe now it's Arvell Reese. So now you've got 5 teams trying to trade up, and you're jacking that price up. And now maybe you have enough capital to take a swing on a Tyus Simpson somewhere. Where
Yeah,
last week I was thinking, why bother? Like, don't worry. But if you got extra
right.
picks, heck yeah, take the quarterback. Um, some of these trade teams we're hearing are, there's a lot of buzz about the Cowboys. All 3 of those mocks I referenced
Yeah.
earlier all had the Cowboys trading up 4 Sonny Styles, 2-6 to the Browns because apparently the Browns are a big trade out team, which makes sense. Like if they don't want to do Carnell Tate, if they don't want to do the wide receiver, then the offensive lineman stack we've talked about, but there's not an offensive lineman they love at 6 based on value, and we'll talk about
Hmm.
value in a minute. Um, but they trade back to 12 and now they're like, hey, let who are all the tackles that are still available? Is it Fano, Lomu and Freeling? Is it just one of those guys, two of those guys, right? But they feel better about that. So it's like Cowboys and Browns. I think Commanders could be a trade up or trade down. I think the Cardinals could be a trade down. I saw in some of those mocks like the Jets picking at 2, but then going from 16 to 10 to try to get one of those defensive backs. Like
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot, the Saints are always like a move up team. So do they just
Hmm.
really want to get, do they want Arvell Reese, right? So, um, yeah, I think that makes sense. I think the trades, you cracking up while my brain's turning here. The trade aspect, I think, and we saw that where like, hey, everyone wants to try to like move up a little bit. Everyone wants to take their day 3 picks and move up more into late day 2. Everyone wants to take those extra picks late in the first round or some early second rounders and get a little higher up on day 2 or on day 1. And this brings me to our last kind of random topic, and it's the conversation of draft value. And we've talked about this a little bit, and I'm not talking positional value because Lord knows this draft has done that to death, right? We've talked about
Yeah.
safeties and guards and linebackers and oh my, and what it means to take those guys in the top 10. Um, Notice I didn't say running back. That was actually an accident. But this is for people in their boards and then the consensus big boards and consensus mock drafts, taking a guy earlier than consensus. And I get when people are talking about like, hey, that guy's like round 2, day 2 grade. He never goes above 50 in the mocks and you take him at 13. That I get. But we're talking about people talking about we're talking about people talking about that's what we do.
Right.
Um Saying I don't want to take that guy at 5 because he's at 8 on the big boards a lot.
Hmm.
I won't lead you anywhere else. How do you feel about these conversations that people are having?
Yeah. This draft of all drafts seems to be really thrusting everybody into those awkward positions. I mean, everybody, the mock drafters, the NFL teams themselves, it really seems to be putting people in a lot of awkward positions. And I've really thought the last few drafts, as drafting, I think has sharpened. Quite honestly,
Hmm. It
I feel
has.
like the last few drafts have had more teams willing to kind of go outside the box of what they think consensus big board is. Based on whatever they view life as being. This year especially though, man, I think it's gonna be wild. Let me get off of your question for just a second. For me, picks 20 to 50, I think you can almost shuffle them in a bag and pull one out and not have a draft grade that different this year if you kind of consensus it all, I don't think they're all that different. Same thing at say 50 through 90, I don't think there's a huge difference. But man, you get back to say number 5, there are teams that want to trade back because it's like, oh, it's too early for a safety. It's too early for that running back. It's too early for the second tackle, you know? But I don't know that there's that many teams willing to trade up. So again, it's going to test your draft integrity is do we really need that tackle? And do we believe that he's the guy for our franchise? If he is, you take him, even if that's not the perceived best value. The best value might be sitting over there in that defensive lineman that you don't need. I mean, that's exactly for the teams that can't trade out of their spot. And I think probably 6 of the top 10 would trade out in a heartbeat. Okay. I
Mm.
really do. Maybe more, but I think at least 6 of the top 10 would trade out in a heartbeat. But for the teams that can't find a trade suitor, they're just going to have to stick and make an awkward pick that doesn't quite match what their value would be.
It's like when my wife brings something to me in a coupon book or at the store and she says, "Look, it's buy one get one 50% off. That's a great
Yep.
deal."
Yep.
And I'm like, "Great. Well, the original price is $100. I don't need to spend the extra 50 just because." She's like,
Nope.
"No, but you don't get it. We're saving $50. No, we're spending 50 more dollars. First of all, what are you buying that's $100 anyways? That's not really happening. But the process is the same. Everybody understands what I'm saying. Why are we don't need to spend the extra $50 just to save the $50, right? So
Right.
why do why do I have to try and trade out of this pick at 4 to take this guy at 8
Hmm.
to pick up a fourth round pick that might have a 20% chance of becoming a starter
Right.
when I maybe have a 50% chance of losing the guy at 8
Yeah.
for 4 spots. Like
Right.
there's so much of that in this draft, and it's because there's not a lot of blue chip guys. It's a lot of guys that probably do have like mid first round grades, but if like Carnell Tate, I think is a great example of this. We
Yeah.
love Carnell Tate. I love
Hmm.
Carnell Tate. I have him in the top 5 of my big board, I think. But like I do understand that he doesn't have the same college pedigree and tape and profile of Jamar Chase, right? Who's a wide receiver that went in the
Right.
top 5. That was like slam dunk, take him in the top 5, or Jeremiah Smith, who's going to come out next year and be a top 5 pick.
Hmm.
Um, but like I love the guy and I love the receiver, and if I'm a team that needs a receiver and I'm in the top 5, I'm gonna take him. Now every
Right.
time I do a mock, I look and the teams that the the Giants and the Titans, I see other needs and guys even higher on my board elsewhere. That's what it's like to draft in the top 5. But this idea that the Browns can't take Tate at 6 because he's eighth on the boards is just something I hear people saying or and like Fano I get, right? Because Fano, it's like, do you want to rely on the arm length thing? But there's like people are talking about good players and they're not even talking about positions, and they're saying I wouldn't
Yeah.
take him there. I wouldn't take this guy in the top 5 because I'd rather take him at 9. It's like, okay, oh, what happens if you can't get to 9 then? So to what
Right.
you're saying, testing that fortitude of, okay, well, if you can't get to 9, then what are you going to do? You don't get to weasel your way into a third option here. It's either are you going to take them, or yeah, are you not going to take them?
And I'm probably the wrong guy to ask about that because I've long since kind of let value sit over to the side and I'm going to pick the guy I want. And if, as long as me and my room and my staff are agreed on it, then we'll let the other people kind of poke fun if they want, as long as we feel confident about what we're doing. But I get it, these teams are looking at consensus to try to get a feel for who are the most coveted players in addition to their own work. And it does have an influence. So, I get it at every single spot. You do want to get the most coveted player, but you hope it also fits your needs. And if it doesn't, that's where you do have a real dilemma every time.
All right, that's enough of a preamble, Ben. Let's get to the final NFL Draft War Room series. All right, and it is now time for the NFL Draft War Room Series, the final installment, part 4. We're beginning with the NFC North. This is where Ben and I put on our GM hats, our draft war room hats. Ben has been acting as I don't know, my director of college scouting, I guess
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
week, this season. Maybe sometimes a little bit of the owner, and I'm here as the general manager trying to put my draft plan together. Maybe I'm the assistant GM, right? Those are the guys that usually set the board, and then the GM just gets to stand there and tell him if he's an idiot or not. So that's probably more what Ben and I are doing. So I'm putting together my draft board. I'm working tireless. I mean, I'm not sleeping for weeks trying to put this thing together, watch the last bit of tape, and the man just sits up there with his red pen and just like no one does a red pen anymore, but gets on the shared iPad that uploads to the cloud with the pen marker or something. I don't know if
Right.
that's I'm sure it's a thing. Anyways, the NFC North. Detroit Lions. We have picks 17, 50, 118, 128, 157, 181, 205, 213, and 222. We are in an interesting spot when it comes to draft planning for the Detroit Lions. We have 3 clear needs: O-line, edge, and safety. We protected ourselves somewhat in free agency with the signings of Cade Mays, Larry Borum, DJ Wanham, and Chuck Clark, but we hardly want to go into the season with all of those players projected to get significant snaps. Our first 2 picks are also in spots where I think the well starts to run dry at some of those positions. 17 feels like it's the last safe spot to rely on. I'll definitely get a starting tackle here. And 50 feels like it's close to the last safe spot for an edge rusher. But by our third pick at 118, it's hard to know if we'll find a safety that can play day one, which is especially tough with Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph still unclear if they'll be ready for the season as they both battle back from injuries. Brian Branch, I think, tore his Achilles late last season, and Kirby Joseph early in the season. It was just reported as a knee cartilage injury. So no specifics is scary. So it's just hard to bank on both of those guys being ready at some point, even early in the 2026 season. So I'd love to walk out of here with a starting safety. But here we go. At 17, I'm looking for a left tackle. If Monroe Freeling or Caleb Lomu make it to me there, I'm taking them, and I'm keeping Sewell at right tackle. And then our line is actually in great shape. If both those guys are gone instead of looking to guard, like potentially taking Awane, I'm looking to trade back. Akeem Mesidor, TJ Parker, Keldrick Falk, Dylan Thieneman, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, Blake Miller, and Maxie Anachor all come into play for me after that, which means I'd go as far back as 24 because that's the specific amount of names. That's 7 names that I could go from 17 to 24 and still feel like I can get any of one of those guys. If I can move back and pick up a third, I'd be in great shape. In that trade down scenario, I'd love to take one of the right tackles specifically and follow Coach Campbell's plan of wanting to move Sewell to left tackle. I don't want to do that. It's not my preference. But if we can walk out, if we can't get Freeling or Lomu, but I can get Blake Miller or Maxi Anachor and move Sewell over, that's what I'll do. Then at 50, I go edge. And with my new third round pick and potentially moving up with one of my fourths, like take 118 and whatever pick I get for that trade back and move up a little bit, then I can get a safety. So Zion Young, Malachi Lawrence, R. Mason Thomas, Gabe Akis are the edges I like. And at safety, I like Kamari Ramsey, Bud Clark, Zachy Wheatley, Jalen Kilgore, and Genesis Smith. So that trade back will allow me to kind of solve that issue of not having a starting caliber safety at 118. With whatever picks are left on day 3, I'm looking at defensive line, defensive back, and wide receiver. And I have several picks to do that with between 128, 157 on down to the 200s. So Ben, how do you feel about this draft plan for the Lions?
Yeah, I like it. And I do think the way you laid it out makes sense because I do think it could play out several different ways. So all the draft teams need 26 draft plans and then add in, 20 more, right? But the Lions especially feel like they need several here, depending on how it does break. I will say, if Freeling were to fall here, I think that what might would be my favorite
Yeah.
one of my favorite spots for him, right?
Yep.
Because of the
Mm-hmm.
organization, the way he plays, and then the fact that you've already got Sewell. I think that's really a great fit. So I think that might be my favorite out of all the things we've seen here. So I definitely like that. And I'm with you. By the time you get back past 20, that tackle group, you're now into the lower, that second tier, however you want to break it down.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you can't get a guy; they're just not the same, man. They're not the same. So, then the edgers, I feel like these edgers are going to go a lot quicker. And I'm not talking about the top group. I think everybody, the top 10, 12 is fairly well
Mm-hmm.
documented. But that next wave of edge rushers, I think they're going to go a lot higher than the mockers are saying. And my reasoning for that is the NFL needs guys that can get to the quarterback, even if they're just rotational guys,
Yep.
you know? And so I do feel like you put the threshold at 50, and I think that's about the last
Yeah.
spot you're going to grab an edge, and even then, it may not be the guys you want. It may be a little cluster of guys that can still produce something. But again, the Lions with Aiden Hutchinson sitting there
Mm-hmm.
can use a guy like that, right? It doesn't have to be the top edge rusher. It can be the sixth or the seventh or the eighth. That'll work. So I'm with you. Now, if for some reason the board shakes up differently and you do throw in Thieneman or McNeil Warren back there, that's okay too. I don't think it's
Mm-hmm.
ideal, but that's okay too because either of those safeties can play. And then when our injured safeties get back, that's all right. There's enough talent floating around there. They can move
Yeah.
around and still produce. So I like that. I will say, and I'm going to pull my board back up here. If you're looking for more rotational kind of starter level type safeties to come in, I do think this draft has them farther down the board. You mentioned some of them, but Genesis Smith, no telling where he's going to go, but that's a good name. Um, Jalen Kilgore, Bud Clark, Zakie Wheatley, you mentioned all those. Even farther down, a BJ Payne or a Jalen Husky, either of those two guys, very aggressive guys, physical guys. Even those kind of guys, again, the Lions may not need them to play starter the whole season,
Hmm.
But you talk about guys that can come in and pick up snaps. I think I would like Bud Clark best out of that later-ish group. I do feel like the Lions can get everything done here, though. This feels like a draft where they can accomplish those needs.
And Bud Clark, correct me if I'm wrong, because that's the range of defensive backs I still have to watch before the draft next week. Um, like a rangy free safety type, right?
Yeah, but fairly solid too.
Hmm.
As for instance, Genesis Smith, the tackling's bad. He
Hmm.
kind of sort of avoids contact almost.
Hmm.
But with Bud Clark, you get some tackling too. You do get
Yeah.
more solidified. But yeah, he's a playmaker. He'll make some plays back there. So
Because if you had to, the later in the draft you get, it's all about like what sacrifices are you willing to make, right?
you
So
got to
like
give
early
up
in the draft,
something.
you're getting a great blend of great athlete, great at multiple things on the field.
Yeah.
And the further back you go, you're starting to give up a bit of athleticism and then a bit of skill and then a bit of maybe
Hmm.
IQ and then a bit of experience and all those things trickle away, peel those things back more and more. So if I'm like I'd love to pick at 85 and get one of those, that big group of safeties we were talking about, because like those guys can
Yeah.
all do a little bit of everything. They can all, maybe they're not going to get up and cover anybody in man in that group,
Right.
but they can all play the free
Right.
safety if you're just like, hey, I just need you to play this zone right here, center field right now. Okay. Or, hey, for this play, come up in the box and protect this gap. Okay, I can do that. Um, when I get past into that 118, I'm like, okay, who can I get that does one thing, right? And I think
Right.
if I'm the Lions and I have to pick a safety there, that's the type I would want. I wouldn't want the day three safety that's just the heat-seeking missile that can't cover. Because if I have like this void at safety, I'd rather get the guy that I can at least say, hey, just like keep the lid on it, play smart, don't let anybody behind you. Maybe we occasionally have you play like a robber role, and because we rely on your IQ and your smarts back there, but I'm
Yeah.
not asking you to come up and tackle a lot. I'll let my all pro deep trenches of linebackers kind of handle that stuff. Um, so all right, good note there on those guys. Yeah, we love Monroe Freeling here. I think that's great.
Yeah.
17's also just weird, and that's why the trade back is an option because if those guys are gone, you could just say, okay, you take the edge at 17, and then at 50, I just watched Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern recently, and like
Hmm.
solid, fine.
Right.
I don't for the teams that are trying to win a Super Bowl this year, I wouldn't want to walk in with him as my left tackle day one necessarily.
Right.
But if I'm supplementing a line that has Sewell and I'm keeping Sewell as an all pro right tackle and I like to develop my interior guys and bring Cade Mays and he's my like weak link, but I have Brock Wright, my tight end, my number two tight end. I just put him next to Caleb all season and then we roll. Um, I can get by with that. But the issue is I don't love any of the edge rushers at 17. So then yeah, we're doing the safety thing and then we're looking at an edge rusher down at 118 and that's no bueno. So I think we came to the right thing here. Find a way to get a tackle in the first round, whether it's one of the left side guys at 17
Yeah.
or move down a little bit, get the right side guy. Get one of those edge rushers at 50, because even if it ends up being a denied Dennis Sutton or a who's my guy, Joshua Josephs out of Tennessee,
Right.
even if those are value reaches, those are the guys in the like 70s to
Right.
80s, whatever, man, you just need an edge. Maybe you can move down a little at 50 and pick up a fourth to use as ammo. But I think, and then you get that safety with whatever your third pick is, I think feels like the right move for Detroit.
Yeah. I'm with
Uh,
you real quick on the tackle because
yeah.
if you don't pick up a tackle here and there's tackles sitting there, we hope that there might be one of the good tackles sitting there at 17. If you don't do it here this year, you do start to feel like as the Lions, you've already kind of gotten a little unmoored from what made you successful 2 years ago.
Yep.
If you can't keep that O line, it may start getting a little more unmoored on you. So
Yeah. And any way, not only to fill that hole specifically at left tackle, but any way you can release the pressure on everybody else at
right,
that line, right? If you
right.
want Christian Mahogany in year two as a starter to develop, you
Hmm.
can't have a turnstile next to him at left tackle, right? If you
No,
want Tate Rutledge to become the like Pro Bowl multi-time or like long-term starter at right guard, you can't have Cade Mays spending all his attention on the left side trying to help those guys. He's got to have a little bit of support. Now he's got Sewell next to him, so that's great. But like, it's
right.
just the pressure release. You can't let it get to the red zone over here and start bringing all these guys to yellow and orange. Everyone's
Yeah.
got to be
That's tough.
a nice cool yellow, a nice, a nice sunshine yellow, a little bit of stress, right? You got to have a little
Right.
bit. It's not going to be all greens anymore. We're not in the Decker, Ragnow, Ali Pulavatai, sort of era anymore. I wanted to see if I could still say his name just off the cuff. I don't think I did a great job, but shout out Big D.
Closer than I would
All
have
right,
got.
Minnesota Vikings. Pick at 18, 49, 82, 97, 163, 196, 234, 235, and 244. This is a doozy, Ben. You're going to like this one. What a time to be the Minnesota Vikings. We tried some things at the end of the Quezzy era, and now we have to pay the price a little bit. A lot of restraints on us during free agency because of the cap situation, but we at least walked out with an upgrade at QB for next to nothing. We also, for the first time since 2022, have a plus number of picks with 9 in total, including 4 in the top 100. We also have to we also happen to have 4 clear needs: defensive tackle, safety, center, and corner. The only problem is our picks don't necessarily slot into good zones for the talent at these positions. 18 might be a little late for a corner, but it's too early for a defensive tackle or a center. We could go safety, but is that going to give us the impact we need if it's the second or third ranked safety in this class? 49 is also too early for a center in the next group of safeties, but it might be good for a defense tackle or corner. 82 is too late for the trench spots, and same with 97, but you can argue defensive backs are where we need the best talent, and are we doing well enough by shopping for those spots there, right? If we wait on defensive back because that's when, that's a good value range for defensive back, but like we actually really need talent for defensive backs, are we doing right by our team? All that said, I'm thinking about moving around in this draft, and not even necessarily to gain or subtract in capital, but just to get the best value at each spot. So we had that whole conversation about value, but this is where I'm talking about like cross round. It's not working out, right? It's not just a couple picks here. Um, so here's what I got for you. Can I move from 18 and 97, or move down from 18 and 97 to move up from 49 and 82? Okay. Could someone move up to 18 if there's a tackle available? Who would I not trade out of 18 for? Let's say Houston wanted to come up from 28. They also have pick 38 in the second round. So that trade package could be 28, 38, and 69 for 18, 49, and 97. Okay. So I'm moving up from the end of the third to the early third, from the middle of the second to the early second, all by trading back 10 spots in the first round. That's a lot cleaner for me. And Houston keeps picks in every round. They're not getting a pick deficit while moving up and getting that tackle. So let's keep playing this out. At pick 28, we take a safety. Say it's Emmanuel McNeil Warren or a corner like Colton Hood. At 39, we take a defensive tackle like Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, or Krista Miller. And at 69, we take a center like Connor Liu or Sam Hecht. Then at 82, we take a defensive back, either corner or safety, whatever we didn't take in the first round. I think that's cleaner when you're talking about what rounds you can shop in for these positions. So if we stick with our picks, some of the names I like at 18 are Jamal McCoy if he's still there, Dylan Thieneman, and taking a swing on Peter Woods. At 49, I still like Kristen Miller here, and I would even trade something to try and go up and get him. But Lee Hunter is also an option. We can try our look at center being available at 82, like Hecht or Logan Jones or Jake Slaughter. Then at 97, shop for another defensive back. I think I had that question earlier of who would I not trade out of at 18. And I think the only guy there for me would be Jamal McCoy. Um, he's the only one that if there's an offer to move back, I think I would stick and pick him. Anything else I'm looking to get out. Now that's interesting because the one piece of draft buzz that has come out since I wrote this was obviously McCoy like ghosted the year of 2025, not at the combine, tests at his pro day, does the jumps, does the 40. And you and Peyton were all excited in Slack about it. And I kept my cheeky comment to myself of like, did we see him move side to side at all? Are we sure he could turn and pivot and swing his hips and all that? But then, it was reported he did well in his positional drills too. It's like, okay, well, that's good to know. But he's kind of moving back down board since then. So I wonder if the insiders are getting intel that like, oh, actually, once people got a hold of the medical, it didn't look good.
Yeah,
But here's my note to my note. You know, the other thing that's funny about the draft and these reports that we get, you know, the new thing last few years about like, oh, well, his knee isn't bad now, but we think it's degenerative. We think it's going to get worse. And I hear that, and like when I first started here, I was like, whoa, that's awful. And like we were just coming off of like the Todd Gurley thing, right? Like arthritis in his knees, he's
yeah,
done by 25. So it's
yeah,
like, that's terrible. Degenerative knee condition. No, Ben, we're both getting up there in age. Is your
yeah.
body getting better as you get older?
Nope.
Would you say it's degenerative?
I definitely degenerative.
Now listen, we're not athletes, okay? We don't even play them on TV. We don't play them as podcasters. But like if the dude tore his ACL, like there's a good chance his ACL is not going to be better than it was before the tear. So like,
Right.
I don't know. Is that the doctor like fail-safe version of just being like, um, this avocado is degenerative? Well,
Yeah.
yeah, if you leave it sit on the counter, like it's not going to get more ripe, you know? It's degenerative, sure. That's what it happens. My knee, as I get older and play more football, is not going to get stronger.
Nope.
Eventually, it's going to keep getting
Get
weaker.
worse.
Isn't that how the body works? I don't know. Anyways, all right, back to the war room. Hope everybody enjoyed that. I don't even know where I left off. And then on day three, we're looking at offensive tackles, guards, and pass catchers. Whatever. Yeah, that was the whole point. So for the Vikings, draft plan. How can I finagle this draft to meet my draft needs? Do you think there's a way to hit these needs or whatever you perceive as the needs for the Vikings with the picks we currently have? Or do you think the trades are necessary and are instead of the convoluted thing I did, do we need to just suck it up and give up one of those day three picks we have and get to a good spot for a player we need?
First of all, let me say I am so proud of you for tapping your inner Brian Flores and doing the most move around, up and down, in and out, crazy stuff possible here for the Vikings. Okay, so
Andrew Van Ginkel
congratulations.
drops and then he blitzes after all. That's what happened at 18 and 49 there.
Flores would be so proud if he were listening, which of course he is. So hello, Brian Flores. We love you, buddy. All right, go get a head coaching job next year. All right, listen.
Brian, talk to us about my degenerative avocado theory. That's what we're going to call it.
That's got to be the title of the podcast, The
All
Degenerative
right.
Avocado Theory.
SEO is
So
going to love that, I think. Right?
it's a great ratings booster.
Everybody looking up, like trying to Google, how do I know my avocado is past its due date? Every 20-year-old man in a grocery store trying to buy avocados for someone special, and then the podcast just comes up instead. That's actually our clientele. That's our what's the word? That's our market, I guess
Yeah,
market is what
target
I'm looking
market.
for.
Yeah.
Target audience. Yeah, there we go. There we go. We got there. Just like the avocado. All right, anyways, the
Back to our
Vikings.
regular scheduled programming. I'm with you on the needs. Defensive tackle, anything in the defensive backfield, basically. So
Hmm.
safety, CB, and then I would say anything interior offensive line, but center is obviously the more dire need. And a real quick note on center because I won't stay on it. We talked about it. There are centers to be had in this draft, so I don't think
Hmm.
the Vikings have to even really try too hard to get a center who should give them something production wise, hope wise for the next few seasons. So I think that's totally fine. The trading around, if you can pull it off, is totally fine too, because it gets you what two of the top 40, I guess is what we were aiming for there.
Hmm.
Um, and a little less awkward on the value side of things is what
Hmm.
we're sitting there. But I will say, because I'm with you, that 16, 17, 18 range is where some you don't know if any of the guys you really like are truly going to be sitting there, or if all of a sudden you're kind of back into the next group of guys which are likable but not as coveted. If you do end up sticking and picking right there in the first round, what is 18 the Vikings have? Is that what
Hmm.
they are? Yeah. I'm me personally, I'm totally happy if they just go ahead and grab the safety right then. And I know that doesn't line up on everybody's value boards. If Thieneman and McNeil Warren are both sitting there, I'd probably I I think McNeil Warren goes better with the Flores defense, but I think Thieneman fits better with Metellus already sitting there because Metellus can
Right.
lock up all the box stuff.
Hmm.
Thieneman can take over all the center field stuff. And I'd be totally happy with either guy, but I think Thieneman's probably currently a better fit for that roster. So I'm totally happy if we just sit safety right there. But, if they're getting intel, and these people all talk and they all lie, but somewhere in there is truth. And if you're good at sifting through and sorting it out, and you feel like, man, at 28, we've pulled off our trade and we should be able to either get a corner we like or a safety we like, then that's fine too. It is to me a little bit more risky about whether or not you'll actually pull that off. Okay.
Yeah.
Because
It's a big drop.
again, if we like a guy, there's a good chance other people like him too, right? Not always, but a good chance. I think I'd rather sit at 18 and just grab the safety I want myself. Now, that leaves us with defensive tackle, and then a corner, right? And I feel like what are their next Vikings picks after 18 if we don't trade
49.
around?
49.
49, and
Hmm.
then the next one
82.
is 82. Okay, well, in my head, you're gonna have at 49. Shoot, I think a lot of the corners that you would like are gone by 49. So
Interesting.
you might be sitting there with the great choices at defensive tackle at 49,
Hmm.
which then puts corner kind of on the back burner at 82. You can still get guys, but they're not the same breed anymore. They're just
Yeah.
not. So I don't think it works out perfect, but that may be where the trade starts to kick back in a lot more favorable. Is all of a sudden maybe we don't get the safety we love, but we can still get one. We can still get a corner. We can still grab a defensive tackle too. So that's a very good point to be made there. If you want to get two defensive backs plus a defensive tackle.
Yeah. And man, we were talking about this before we recorded. I obviously am heavy O line,
Yeah.
just in general. I
Yep.
push those guys way up my board. I push those guys high up in the mock. I love scouting those guys. I really value those guys. And I'm sitting there with the way teams are utilizing centers now, the way they're
Mm-hmm.
valuing centers now, not even just financially, but like we'll literally just pull a guy off a practice squad and he's our day one starter, like all the way through camp and win a Super Bowl, right? Or the Texans and go deep in the playoffs. Um, and it's always guys that they had like from the previous regime because the Titans are doing this right now. Schlottman is their projected center, and he was a backup with the Giants under Dayball.
Yeah.
Cohen did this with now Robert Hainsey had real snaps in the NFL, not like some of these other guys. Jake Andrews, practice squad player with the Patriots, comes down with um their OC, whose name's escaping me in Houston. Uh the Seattle center, I don't remember if he had any ties to Kubiak before he came to Seattle. Um but Schlottman is the Titans projected day one center, and he just came from New York, backup, don't even know how much he's ever played for
Right.
but so there's a lot of teams here. All that's to say, there's a lot of teams that I feel like need a center. And I
Mm-hmm.
really think the value at center is going to be like in the 70s, late 60s to the 70s. Vikings, Browns, Bengals, Vikings here at 82. Every time I do a mock, just are right on the outside of that. But like we said about tackles, if they're actually a little further down than I think, maybe the centers are as well. So maybe 82 is actually a great spot to stay. So if you take the safety at 18, you just see which defensive tackle versus which corner is there at 49. You get the center at 82, and then you take a tier step down at whoever at 97, whether it's you're seeing what defensive tackle is there or you're seeing what corner is there. I think that is still a nice clean way to do that for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a choice. Do I want to really nail? It's a choice for me. It may not actually end up being a choice, right? Depending on where the draft goes.
Mm,
For me, the choice would be: do I want to go ahead and just nail the safety that I truly want here, whether it's
yep.
Cinnamon or McNeil Warren, and then figure out the rest of the draft? Or do I want to kind of trade around and see if I can nail, all three spots, the top three spots? The center, I don't think is a problem, but nail my other three spots. It's an argument worth having. I would tend to go grab the guy I want at safety, but
Yeah.
there's not it's not a bad choice the other way either.
Yeah. I just I've watched Krista Miller again recently, and I just love that guy. There's no way he's there at 49. And Lee Hunter I think has a lot of fans, so I don't think he's going to be there. And he's not the kind I would want for Minnesota right now. Anyways, they've got big dudes on there, and Hunter is he's squatty, but like six
Hmm.
one to 6'1", 295 or 300, 305,
Right.
whatever he is. All right, enough there on Minnesota. Chicago Bears pick at 25, 57, 60, one or not one, 89, 129, 239, and 241. So our offense with 1 year under Ben Johnson is right there. With some development and an increased role for Colson Loveland and Luther Burden, we think the offense can stay strong this year and get even better. Our defense, however, is what needs improving. Bottom 10 scoring defense, run defense, and pressuring the quarterback last season. This has been a consistent issue for us going back to the last coaching regime, and we plan on correcting it now. Our one major need on offense is still possibly at left tackle. Ozzy Trapilo got hurt late last season and is in danger of missing a lot of 2026. We have some in-house options. Braxton Jones, we re-signed. Theo Benedict played last year when Trapilo went out. Kieran Amadaji was a draft pick from a couple of years ago. Jedrick Wills, Brown's former first-round pick, left tackle, took a year off to recover for some injuries. We're taking a swing on him. Um, Taylor Decker is even out there, who played with Ben Johnson for several years there in Detroit. He's still a free agent, kind of seeing what the post-draft landscape is. So while I'm, waiting to see and wanting some of these left tackles to make it and seeing who's there at 25, 57, 60, the names we mentioned, Freeling, Lomu, Tiernan, I'm not necessarily prioritizing that. I kind of want to just go into camp with all of those guys and see who can play left tackle. I don't want to get ahead of my skis if I don't have to, even though it seems like there's a window for this team to win a Super Bowl, but the defense is far enough away that I'm like, it's not going to be the left tackle that stops me, right? So I'll see who's there and I'll stack it up against the defensive lineman. But I just want to say left tackle is something that's something we're thinking about. So at 25 though, I'm looking at Caleb Lomu, um, anybody else that might fall, but Caden McDonald, TJ Parker, Malachi Lawrence, and Zion Young. At 57 and 60, that's where I'll see if Tiernan's there, but also Dominique Orange, Cassius Howell, R. Mason Thomas, and Gabe Backus. If I get three of those guys, even if they're all on defense, I'll consider it a home run. Like if we walked out with Caden McDonald to plug the run, and then at 57 and 60 got like R. Mason Thomas and Gabe Backus to rush the quarterback, like that would be phenomenal. Um, then I have one more top 100 pick there at 89. Uh, and I'll look at pass catchers and defensive backs here because we, lost a lot of those guys over the course of free agency. Um, or an offensive tackle if I haven't taken one yet. And then of those four positions, I'll take the other three with my late round pick, right? So tackle, wide receiver, safety, corner. I'm also, there's another team that's going to be looking at centers. Drew Dahlman retires, fifth round pick for Garrett Bradbury. I've said since they went with Bradbury, I bet there's somebody that Ben Johnson likes. I think Matt, is it Golbin from Michigan State?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Golden. Yep.
makes a little bit of sense as like at 129 there, like a really late round pick,
Hmm.
a little bit of an undersized guy though. But Ben Johnson went and got Drew Dahlman and went and got Garrett Bradbury. So could that be something? Parker Brailsford is also a little bit undersized guy. So those were names that were interesting there in terms of centers. But I'm keeping an eye on the offensive linemen, the left tackles to get in and play this year, Ben. But 25, 57, 60, I'm really just looking at defensive line, trying to bulk that group up.
All right. So I like everything you're putting out there. I do feel like Chicago is in a bit of a weird situation and kind of a unique situation. They don't feel like they're in the situation that a lot of other teams are in that we've looked at. You mentioned that they're kind of sort of closish, that they may even be on the fringe of a little Super Bowl window here, whether it's this year or next year. It feels like they're on the edge. The offense there's really no reason to think, based on what we saw last year and what we've seen out of the coach before, that this offense can't continue to be really good and even improve, right? Without even adding much resources to it. So I'm with you on all that. And then the names of the players you added, and yet it still kind of sort of feels like they're not exactly sure what's going to be sitting there at 25 and whether or not what's sitting there is even going to match what they need, right? So it really feels like an odd position, but they've still got quite a few good draft picks, as you mentioned, and not as many needs this year as they've had in 30 years, really, to be
Hmm.
honest about it, including their Super Bowl run year, right? Okay. Let me go back here and hit some of those names that you were talking about. So, Caden McDonald is not a guy that I'm very high on, generally speaking. But I gotta say, I think he's a great fit for the Bears. I mean, I think he is beautiful. And if I were going to plug him into any team for the late first round, that would be the team. I think that is an absolutely beautiful pick that fits totally what they need. So if some of the other stuff that they're looking at isn't sitting there, then yeah, just go ahead and grab McDonald, put a real man right there in the middle of your defensive line and get to work. I think that's great. I would love to see, because you mentioned it in your notes, does one of the left tackles that we like drop? Now, you
Hmm.
and I are fairly convinced it's not going to happen. All right.
Yep.
That one of those true good ones that we just don't think is going to be there. We've done the work, done it for years, done it this year. But you got to have a plan for in case he does. And if he does, you take him. And if he doesn't, I agree with you. I wouldn't go grab one of the other guys. I think we've done quite a bit of offensive line work here the past couple of off seasons. I'd rather give them a try if we can't get the guy we want here. So I agree with you on that. Can we catch an edge rusher here? My opinion, and this is one of the things that I've been kind of on with the edgers. The Cassius Howell, R. Mason Thomas, Gabe Akis group. I don't think they're going to be there at 57 and 60.
Hmm.
Maybe one of them. My feeling is, again, teams need edge rushers, even if they just turn out to be rotational edge rushers. But these guys that have shown at college, at least, they have figured out how to get, if not sacks, they've at least figured out how to stress and pressure the quarterback. I figure by 50, 45, 50, a lot of them are off this board.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean nobody's sitting at 60 because there's not going to be 12 guys go before picks
Right.
57 and 60, but I do feel like we may hit double digits, honestly, in terms of edge rushers by the time you get to 50, 55.
Yeah.
So there may be a guy sitting there. We can grab one. I'm just not sure it's going to be enough. So then that brings us back to TJ Parker at 25, right?
Yep. Hmm.
That's a guy that could be sitting there and could be perfect for the Bears' edge rusher needs. And I'm not sure I don't like that even better because he's on your
Yeah.
list, right? He's
Yep.
absolutely on your list here.
Yep.
So I love McDonald for the Bears. I think I like Parker even better for the Bears' needs. And that's all assuming one of the tackles we don't like doesn't drop there to 25.
Yeah. It might make more sense to do the edge rusher at 25 if you're getting to choose, let's just say two of these guys are available between TJ Parker, Malachi Lawrence, and Zion Young.
Okay.
And then at 57, you're looking at 57 and 60, you're more looking at Dominique Orange, Grayson Halton, Daryl Jackson Jr., which if you look at the mocks, like might be a little high for those guys. Those
Right.
those are like round three guys,
Right.
but like probably not going to be there at 89 either. So,
Hmm.
if you think about the draft sometimes, this would be an interesting study for us to do over the summer. Instead of thinking about, this is going to sound so antithetical to what we'd like to do. Instead of thinking about players, you think about skill sets. You do Moneyball. You do the A's. You're not buying players, you're
Yeah.
buying runs, right? I'm not buying defensive tackles. I'm getting run stops. Who gets run stops? Dominique Orange gets run stops. It's not pretty
Right.
when he does it. He's never getting after the quarterback. But if I just need someone to two gap and make a tackle if a guy runs in his direction, I can get Dominique Orange to do that. The value isn't always there at 57 because he's not also going to give you like a pass rush upside, like a round two defensive tackle like Kristen Miller or Lee Hunter will. But I just need someone to stop the run. Okay, Dominic Orange does that. If you draft like that over time, are you hurting yourself so badly from a value standpoint that you look up and you just have a bunch of role players, you don't have a bunch of stars? Maybe. But if you do it just sometimes, right? Is that helpful? That's something to think about for the Bears.
Yeah, I agree, and
All
I
right,
will say for
rest of the draft.
Chicago's in an odd spot where I think they can do that this year. Yeah,
Hmm.
especially considering it looks like their coaching staff has this figured out. That always helps a lot. When your coaching staff looks like they know what they're doing from a scheme standpoint, you can do more of that Moneyball type stuff, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah. The scheme, uh, X's and O's, not Jimmy's and Joe's, right? Not that again. Another theory we
Yeah,
don't actually want to subscribe to a lot, but if the scheme boosts your Jimmy and Joe's, right? Like the 49ers and what they've done with their offensive line for years, like those guys
yeah, yeah.
look better than they are, and maybe that's a lesson I should have taken on Jalen Moore before when the Chiefs signed him, right? And I was high on him. I'm telling everybody like, don't. I've watched the film. Like he's good. He's good. He's good.
Right.
How much is that him? How much is that Shanahan? We'll find out when he starts this year, but we'll see.
Hmm.
Um, should the Bears, for as many defensive backs as the Bears lost in free agency, you look at their starters, and they're still actually in pretty good shape. But you look at their depth chart, and it's Kobe Bryant they signed. Kyler Gordon's still their slot. Tyreek Stevenson, Jalen Johnson is their outside corners. Jalen Johnson, is that his name?
I
Anyways,
think, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. Yeah.
um, and their other safety, I'm forgetting off the top of my head. They have another starting safety slot in there that's like, yeah, that guy can play. But they had what, like four defensive backs leaving free agency, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and the outside corner who had so many interceptions, and then the Jets got him for $3.5 million, and then Kevin Byard. Like they had a lot of guys leave, but I felt like with the Bears and this next team here that we're going to talk about with the Packers, a lot of teams I feel like their lineups just got cleaner, like easier to read because of some departures. But then it's just about like filling in depth. But was there anything else for the Bears you thought? Whether it's, obviously I didn't say this, but like they trade DJ Moore. Do they need another pass catcher a little earlier? Do they need a defensive back a little bit earlier? Or is that depth, looking at just depth from 129 on, kind of where they should be for those groups?
I tell you, it wouldn't hurt for them to look at wide receiver at some point, because yeah, we trust Johnson, and we trust we think we like the quarterback now under Ben
Hmm.
Johnson, and they've got pass catchers, so that's not a problem. But while we're at it, and you mentioned the draft picks they have, there are some NFL size athletes at wide receiver who have the size and the speed that you could add into the mix and might even become some of your feature guys in future seasons. They could have a
Yeah.
year to develop. So listen, that's Ted Hurst from Georgia State going to be sitting
Hmm.
there. That is Bryce Lance from North Dakota State going to be sitting right there. Those are NFL sized guys who came from small schools. Um, Even if they were tempted, a Chris Brazzell who's got that tremendous size and speed to work with. If you're wanting to try to max out, maybe not this year, but maybe next year, if you're wanting to try to max out Caleb Williams' arm strength a little bit,
Hmm.
along with Johnson's scheme abilities, it would not hurt to glance over at wide receiver at these selection spots too.
And that's why even though they have all those in-house names at left tackle, I do think it's important to try to get one in those top three picks. Like if you can come out with one defensive tackle, one edge rusher, one left tackle, and then at 89, you have that to play with, right? You can
Right.
get one of the wide receivers. You could even get a corner. You could get a safety because then it can be depth at 129 or later. You're not sitting there like, I really hope we get an impact guy at 129 because it doesn't feel like that's going to happen at this draft at really any position.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, even with all those names at left tackle, like I would really just love to take another swing there. Um, because guess what? Like Joe Tooney's not going to be around forever, So if this is a guy you
Right.
draft him, and even if he doesn't play right away, he ends up being a high upside left guard potentially. Let's say Trapillo does come back and is good in 2027 still, and he's your left tackle. Okay, well, you took Caleb Tiernan at 57. You could probably play some left guard, and you make that your succession plan to Tooney, and then you're helping yourself for a long time. And by the way, you also got a receiver at 89. I think that's pretty important, especially if we get to 57 and it's the Will Smith meme of like, oh, where'd all these edge rushers go? Like, oh, none of these guys we
Right.
were hoping for are here.
Right.
Um,
It's possible.
all right, good on Chicago, Green Bay. Uh, Picks 52, 84, 120, 153, 160, 201, 236, 255. This actually just changed the other day by them trading Dontavian Wicks to the Eagles. So keep that in mind when you're also thinking about their wide receivers. Uh, Green Bay, we've lost a lot of depth from our roster this year, which makes our starting lineups look cleaner, but obviously hurts our future outlook and ability to take on injuries. With 8 picks this year, we have to be sure to bolster up our depth more than anything. A big focus for doing that will be our defensive front, which has been inconsistent over the years and lacked a clear identity. So at 52, we're starting with our front primarily on the edge. Stop me if you heard this before today. But if Kristen Miller is there, he'd be high on our board as well. But Gabe Backus, Derek Moore, Denai Dennis Sutton, they're the edge rushers we're targeting specifically at 52 as we try to lock in one body type, one scheme in this like 3-4 um,
Yeah.
front that we're running. So these guys that, are between 6'3", 6'4", but a little bit bigger, 6'45" and up are kind of what we're looking for. So at 84, we'll look at Joshua Josephs, Kieran Crawford, LT Overton, Grayson Halton, and Daryl Jackson Jr. But this is also where we're going to start thinking about replenishing our offensive line depth. Demetrius Crownover, Brian Parker II, Jalen Farmer. And then I have 6 picks on day 3. If I don't go O-line at 84, the pick at 120 could be a great spot for a depth move at tackle based on where the strengths of this class lie and my needs, it might actually serve me better to wait on offensive line until here. When I did that 3 round mock that I went through on YouTube on box score, I had Crown over at 84. But the more I look at it, the more I'm like, maybe day 2 is just defensive line. Kind of like we were talking about with Chicago. Can I
Yeah.
get a defensive tackle? Can I get an edge rusher? Do I double up on one of those spots? And then at 120, I can get a project. It'd be a project, but like this is what Green Bay does, right? Fourth round pick, offensive lineman, sits for 2 years, develops, maybe plays a couple games at a couple different positions, and then eventually becomes a starter. Get back to their roots. Then at 153 and 160, I'll look at a wide receiver and a defensive back, 2 positions that we let guys go in free agency. We traded in the spring, and we want to replenish the depth a little bit. With my 3 picks in the 200s, I'll probably go back to the defensive line, secondary, and maybe an interior offensive lineman. Um, so I think I'm settling in on those day 2 picks, defensive line, pick 120, an offensive tackle, and I'm talking like you could do an Austin Barber from Florida. You could do a total project like a Markel Bell, 153, 160, right there in the middle of the draft. Wide receiver, defensive back, and then 200s. You're just looking at depth, especially in the trenches. So what do you think about this plan for the Packers?
It actually surprised me when you first put it out there, the edge part. But the more you explained it, the more I liked it. So when you're talking about somewhere at 52, possibly picking up Gabe Akis or Dennis Sutton, I think those are good fits for the Packers for what they could start to do here, especially Akis. I think, which I'm probably higher on DDS, probably higher than I should be, quite honestly. But Gabe Akis, I think, is a great fit for what Green Bay could want to do here. I really think that's a beautiful fit. I hadn't even put that together yet, but I really think that's a great fit. So if he's sitting here, and some people love Akis, some people think he's long gone. I think this may be right where he ends up, right in this range here. So if you can catch him here, I believe that's a really good fit right there. If that doesn't work out, one of the edgers that you're liking here to kind of set that edge there, then the defensive tackle you mentioned, Kristen Miller, would be a great fit right here. Again, if Miller does nothing else, he helps you set that identity. You've got the
Hmm.
the Georgia football defensive players, but he really brings the run stopping ability to the table here. Really helps you set that identity. So I like that as well. It is there's no question the offensive line talent drops off big time, like cliffs, but that's true every draft. And having said that, you started mentioning some names. I'm going to scroll back over here and mention names too. It, it's amazing. Isaiah World has fallen deep in this
Yeah.
draft.
That was
There's a
another
Drew
name.
Shelton floating around. You mentioned Austin Barber. You mentioned Markel Bell. I agree. I even an Emil Wagner late, right? I mean, if you were to switch over to the guard side of things, again, just kind of trying to replenish or
Hmm.
solidify the depth here. Um, I think you mentioned Jalen Farmer, but
Hmm.
even a Bo Stevens from Iowa, or
Hmm.
an N.S. Cooper from Miami, or a Billy Schrauth, who you
Yep.
mentioned weeks ago from Notre Dame, could all be guys because I do feel like the Packers got to do something here on the offensive line in this draft. And while that may not be at pick 52, I feel like they've got to think about it at every selection. I don't think they can just let this go. So bringing more guys in, they've shown the ability to kind of draft and develop offensive line, but I don't think they can ignore it in this draft. So I would add another guy or two in here for sure. But I like the plan there. And again, it's not like they're working with top picks here, right? It starts at
Right.
52 for them unless they trade up, which I kind of sort of doubt they'll do. So, you know,
Um, yeah, the edge rusher thing is interesting because you know I forget the whole line of, but the LaFleur's had, I think he's on his fourth DC in his
okay.
time with Green Bay as the head coach, and they start off with these big edge rushers, and they've kept these ends. They draft defensive ends, and then they ask them to stand up, right? So I think all the way back to when it was Preston Smith being
Yeah,
275, 6'4", and he's standing up, and it's
right.
oh, who was always playing across from him? I'm not gonna be able to think of it now, but it's like when Zadarius Smith was there. There was some other big edge rusher on the other side, but anyways, and then Rashawn Gary comes in, 275 pounds, 6'4".
Yeah,
Lucas Van Ness comes in, and I remember Van Ness. It was a big thing pre-draft about like, oh, where is he gonna play, right? Because he didn't play a lot of snaps, but he's got 6'5", 270 something, but very athletic, very young. So it's like, okay, he could go somewhere and be like maybe cut 5 pounds, be a stand-up guy, and then or he could bulk up a little bit and be a hand in the dirt guy. But it felt
right,
like he just stayed the same and was a stand-up guy, even though he was like a defensive tackle in college because he was a rotational guy.
right,
So it just never and Gary always alternated between like was he a hand in the dirt guy, is he rushing over the interior on third, and just never felt clean. And so like right now, Luke's Van Ness, like I'm not even really considering in my plan, right? But you go get Micah Parsons, you shed 15, 20 pounds by going to Parsons. And even though
right.
Akis and um Sutton are both a little bigger, both about 260, that's still the
Hmm.
more appropriate range where those guys can stand up, they can rush off the edge, they can be real pass rushers. And I just feel like they need to they're another team here. The whole NFC North really is in a place where it's like they kind of got to find an identity on one side of the ball or another,
Yeah,
or rediscover some identity that was really important to their success. And I think the Packers overall not only literally on the field identity of how they're playing, but just how they're drafting and developing and how they're creating these rosters. Um, Need to get back to that because I mean I know we could tie it to Aaron Rodgers leaving versus Jordan Love kind of coming up, but I wrote this in an article I did for NFL Mocks when I did a mock for the Packers. For the last two off seasons, they've done things outside of their norm where
hmm,
they're spending big money on offensive linemen, drafting first round offensive linemen or wide receivers, things they didn't do under like with Rodgers, whether it was McCarthy or whether it was LaFleur. And they do that, and they had two pretty disappointing first round exits of the playoffs. And I just think they're going to sit back and look at themselves and be like, mid round pick offensive linemen, defensive linemen that are going to fit an identity we want. Let's get back to what we do and try to win a playoff game this year. Um, I think it's a big year for Green Bay. Anything else for you on the NFC North?
just on the Packers there because it's an interesting point. We talk all the time about teams. We'll bring up things in the draft all the time, just exploring talent to go with certain franchises, and we'll talk about, and other people say, well, that franchise would never do that.
Hmm.
Well, listen, these franchises all, when they feel the need to, will break their form. They'll
Yep.
get away from it. Some of them figure out, hey, we had some success doing that. Others of them kind of sort of find out, well, there was a reason we were doing it that other way because it's just who we are. Yeah, I'm not even sure we can break the mold. We tried DNA wise, it's just who we are. So it's hard to explain that because sometimes even the owners have changed and the
Hmm. Hmm.
franchise still has that same DNA. It's just hard to explain, but it's in the building, right? And I think you're right here on the Packers because other teams have broken the mold sometimes and done things out of the norm and it's worked. The Packers doesn't necessarily feel like they're a franchise that's going to be able to do that, but that's okay. They've had a lot of success doing it a certain way, so that's fine.
And part of it was like the reason we could do mid-round swings on O-line and wide receivers because we have a Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
But so it yeah, it logically made sense. Hey, we're going to Jordan Love, who we think is good. This
Hmm.
isn't me saying Jordan Love's not good. I love Jordan Love. But not Aaron Rodgers. So okay, let's give him a little boost for first round pick on a left tackle. But the guy hasn't been their starting left tackle since they drafted him.
Yeah.
Big money on Aaron Banks to really help the run game. Run game was worse last year than it was the year before.
Yeah.
Um, and then first round pick on a wide receiver. He's wide receiver four for most of the year. We have to let Romeo Dubs go in free agency and trade Dontavian Wicks to say Golden is, a
You're the
starting
guy.
wide receiver for us now.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, this should be a get back to basics, I think, for Green Bay. All right, Ben, it's time for the AFC South. We're starting with the Tennessee Titans. They have picks 4, 35, 66, 101, 142, 144, 184, 194, 225. A lot of fours there. Oh boy. This is the first thing I wrote. Things are exciting here in Tennessee. Cam Ward, Robert Saleh, Brian Daboll, and a lot of money spent in free agency. We spent real dollars on the defensive line, then on the perimeter pieces of wide receiver and corner. But my biggest needs are more in the middle of my team at linebacker and interior offensive line. 4 and 35 could be good spots for both those picks. If Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles are there at 4, I'm taking one of them. If they go ahead of me at 2 and 3, then I'll add a receiver to the mix in Carnell Tate to give Ward plenty of targets. At 35, I'll look at the guards, but I need a right guard. So that would be Keelan Rutledge out of Georgia Tech, unless Pregnon or Basantis can play the right side. Those are primarily left side players in college. So moving over to the right side might be tricky. We'll check in, we'll see what they could do. But Keelan Rutledge is who we're kind of looking at 35. If they're there, I could also look at the tackles like Blake Miller and Maxi Anachor and maybe pick them to right guard for a season or play with the idea of JC Latham playing guard over on the right side instead. Or I could go Jennings Dunker out of Iowa. But 35 would also be a good wide receiver spot if I don't like my options on the line. But I feel like between Miller, Iheanacho, who I don't think are going to be there, but Jennings, Dunker, and then Rutledge, and then maybe moving Basantis or Pregnon over. I think I can get a right guard at 35 that I'm going to be excited about. So 66 and 101 are ideally a wide receiver and an outside corner for me. If I can hit on a cheap outside receiver, outside player at corner to allow Alante Taylor to play a lot of snaps in the nickel, I'd love to do that. That's his best spot. Even if he has to be outside if we're in base, because of the money he got. If we're in 11 personnel, if we're in nickel, I want Taylor to be in the slot as much as possible. But more than likely, this is going to be the best spot for a wide receiver and then go corner at 101. I think 66 is probably a good spot for slot corners, guys that are going to play on the inside. 101 are like developmental outside guys that will take a swing on. So if my top four could be Styles or Reese at 4 to play linebacker, and then say I get Dunker or Rutledge to play guard at 35, and then maybe a Brazel or a Jeremy Bernard at 66. And then at 101, maybe a Malik Muhammad or a Takario Davis. I'd be really happy with that. Those kind of 8 names, those position groups are what I'm really looking for. Then at 142, I'm looking at some centers. Matt Goldman out of Michigan State or Parker Brailsford out of Alabama. And then with 4 picks between 144 and 225, we'll look at depth for both the offensive line and defensive line. Ben, how do you feel about this plan for the Tennessee Titans?
Yeah, I like it. Let me go backwards here. The offensive line work, the interior offensive line work, I like that. I won't even touch the names right now that you mentioned, but I do like the fact that we're working on that interior offensive line here. And it may even take another off season, in my opinion, to
Hmm.
truly crisp up and true up that offensive line. But I feel like they have tried to work on it, and it's a work in progress. And I feel like there's material to work with without burning up your top pick, material to work with in this draft to improve that offensive line setup. So I like that a lot. I really like that. Um, Back all the way at the top of the draft was it number 4 the Titans are picking.
Hmm.
Uh, Yeah, grab an Ohio State player. I absolutely totally love it. Now, you mentioned if Reese and Styles are both gone, then yeah, let's go ahead and pick up Carnell Tate. Let's help out Cam Ward with a legit NFL receiver there. But my preference would be Styles or Reese. Would be my preference there to add on to the Tennessee Titans. I really think they could use the infusion of talent, but also use that size and athleticism
Hmm.
mixed in there. So that would be my preference there on the top end side there. And then the wide receivers thing. Let's say Tate is not who we grab there at four because it's really who I would rather not grab at
Right.
four. So we still have a wide receiver need. Man, sitting there at 66, you could think about it at the 35 slot. I think you might have even mentioned
Hmm.
that, but sitting there at the 66 slot, I do feel like a number of the good wide receivers that are more coveted, kind of the first two tiers, will be gone. I think everybody
Hmm.
agrees on that. But there's still only so many teams that need wide receivers, right? Not all 32 teams are going to grab one, and there's a bunch of them. So they are going to spread out at least through the first two rounds. I'm not sure by the time we get into the third round, they're going to be sitting there,
Hmm.
but they at least ought to be there for the top 60, 62 picks. Okay. I really do feel like that. So by the time you're at 66, there's a very good chance still, I think, one or two guys is sitting right there at that cusp. And that could be any number of guys, right? Whoever falls. So what, is that Williamson from Clemson that falls there? Is it Jermaine Bernard who falls there? Is it Hurst from Georgia State that falls there? Bryce Lance from North Dakota State that falls there? There ought to be a couple of guys somewhere. Early third is really pushing it, I think, to get guys that you really still want, but they ought to be there. So I think that's a good chance. And if you're sitting at, because you got plenty of draft picks, if you're sitting at 66 and you're like, hey, we'd love to go shoot for Brazel
Hmm.
because we think Cam Ward can get him the ball down there,
Hmm.
um, then maybe we trade up some if Brazel's still sitting there. I don't know that he will be, but
Yeah.
if he were, you could start thinking those kinds of thoughts. So yeah, I like what we're doing here. We still have a lot of holes to fill. We really do. You, but I think we can hit those holes that you mentioned here in this draft.
Do you think we could be better off taking a receiver at 35 and then looking for alignment at 66? And maybe instead of a guard, you're getting in early on one of those centers. If instead of Dunker at 66 or a Dunker at 35, we're going with a Connor Liu at 66, getting the first center off the board, and
Yeah,
and then at 35 we get our pick of the receivers in that second
that
group.
that probably is a little bit better because I really do feel like because again, where those fishing pools going to run out,
Yeah.
I really do feel like the start of the third round, and I haven't counted yet, but man, I feel like by the end of the second round, I feel like probably seven or eight of those wide receivers are gone. I
Hmm.
really feel that way. Maybe even nine of them, depending on how it works. So yeah, I that may be the better stack because man, I at 35, I still feel like there's going to be some good receivers sitting right there, and that doesn't even touch the later group of receivers that could be sitting at 50, for instance. So,
Yeah.
um, that might be the better stack because even if you don't get, because I hate to identify one player, right? But like, yeah, I'll take him. Even if you don't get Connor Liu back there at 66 for some reason, you should still be able to get Hecht, right? One of the
Yep.
others should be
Hmm.
sitting there, I would think. So
Yeah.
that may be the better stack.
And then, because maybe the 30s would be a little, I mean, it doesn't seem like all the murmurs are Rutledge is going to be more of a top 50 guy than a later on day two guy. But maybe between Pregnon, Basantis, Rutledge, and Dunker, maybe you never know. Maybe one of them makes it to 66 or they get to 60 and you take 142 and you move up a couple spots like you were
Right,
kind of saying at
right.
receiver. Um, because 66, it feels like that next tier of wide receivers you'd rather get at the end of the third or in the middle of the third than right at the end of the second. Um, the one name that's kind of there at 66 at receiver is Antonio Williams, but he just went and got Wan'Dale Robinson, so you wouldn't necessarily want to get both those guys. Um,
Yeah,
so it
yeah,
kind of
that's a
feels
good
like
point.
you're either waiting until 101 or you're going at 35 for a receiver. So maybe that does make more sense, especially if you can do trenches at four with the linebacker. You get the linebacker, you get a receiver. You pick the best interior offensive lineman, whether it happens to be a center or one of those guards makes it. Um, and then if you go corner at 101 and then 142, let's say you get the center at 66. We named a bunch of guards earlier that could be there in the 140s. And then you try to go bring Kevin Zeitler back on another 1 year deal or Greg Van Roten, some like you just get a stopgap guard. That's easier to do than a stopgap center in today's NFL. Um, so that probably does make more sense. I like that.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not trying to rag on these guys because those discussions have long since been had. I'll say the same thing about the Titans tonight that I said about the Jets on a different show last night, and that is it's kind of it's kind of sort of hard to get a bad group of draft picks here. You're gonna get picks that most
Hmm.
people would agree are likable guys to have on your team. But what's going to be way more important for both these franchises is that these coaching staffs figure this out, that they can scheme up these guys and get it together. Because man, how often have we seen these franchises have several draft picks and get excited and it doesn't work? So a lot of pressure here on these coaching staffs to try to scheme up the talent that they're going to get because they're going to get some talented guys in the building for sure.
Listen, man, we're just podcasters doing mock drafts and stuff, man. That part isn't for us. We don't have to worry about it. We just say where to pick
Not
guys,
my
and then
problem.
this is why like Omar Khan is a really popular GM in the spring in the off season because he like plays the board really well and the mock drafters are like, oh, that was good value, or wow, they moved down here and got that guy. And then and then you look at the football field on Sundays and you're like, oh, none of this worked out the way it was supposed to up here. But again, that's not our bread and butter. Maybe we'll bridge that gap one day.
You know
Um,
what's gotta suck is to be one of the 32 best general managers in the world, but to know you may get fired and not ever get another shot at it, right? Like that's the business, right? You're so good at your job that you have maneuvered, maybe politics is part of it, but you've maneuvered your way into a top spot.
mhm.
You get paid a lot of money. You have a high profile position with a major billion-dollar franchise. And yet, because you're competing against other teams and other people who are really smart too, man, sometimes you're just out of luck, despite good moves, right? It can happen.
This is a Joe Douglas tweet. It feels like it would be the appropriate Twitter quote retweet by me there. Um, I don't even know why I picked Douglas. Probably just because he had the bad luck of getting that job with the Jets.
Yep.
Um, All right. Anyways, moving on. Houston Texans. We
Mhm.
we talked about the Texans earlier via the Vikings, but they're picking at 28, 38, 59, 69, 106, 167, 243. The needs haven't really changed much for the Texans since the D'Amico Ryan, C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson era got started. We always have receivers, linebackers, and defensive backs, but could use help on the defensive line and on the offensive line. We even added David Montgomery this offseason to hopefully give a solid back to the offense, but if Detroit let him out of the building, I wonder if he's also out of juice. We made some investments in the offensive line. We swapped out Titus Howard for Braden Smith, added Wyatt Teller, and brought back Ed Ingram. Ingram and Teller were both left guards in college, but predominantly right guards in the NFL. So they could probably work out one of them playing on the left side, one of them playing on the right side. But between Smith, Ariante Ursery, and Blake Fisher, I may need one more tackle to truly get through the year and try to compete for a Super Bowl. So at 28, Blake Miller, Maxi Anachor, and Caden Proctor will be high on our board, along with defensive tackles like Peter Woods, Caden McDonald, and Keldrick Falk. At 38, I'm looking at the same positions and adding edge rusher to the list. Manuel Pregnon, Jennings Dunker, Chase Basantis, Keelan Rutledge, Kristen Miller, and a whole host of edge rushers we've already been talking about. At 59, I'll make sure to get the last one of those positions. Then at 69, looking at defensive backs. With 3 day 3 picks, I'll look to take another swing on a running back, an extra DB, and maybe a linebacker for D'Amico, who just can't help himself. They traded for Marte Mapu like a week or two ago, and I was just like, this guy just can't freaking quit, man. Any kind of linebacker he can get his hands on, he's going to do it. Um, so, anyways, ideally with those 4 picks in the top 70, would love to walk out with like a tackle, a guard, a defensive tackle, and an edge rusher. Just really beef up the lines, and then start looking at some defensive back and other depth after that. What do you think about this plan for the Houston Texans?
I'm really close with you, really close on it. Let me hit the defensive tackle group first because I agree they could use somebody in the middle. We even talked about it last off season, just didn't happen, right? This defense is as scary as it gets, and I include Seattle Seahawks right along with it. I mean, people do not want to go up against this defense. It might even be better this year than it was last year, possibly. Like, this is a scary defense. If you dropped in a Peter Woods or a Caden McDonald on this defense, goodness gracious, like, this could I hate to heap on it, but if everything were to click and under D'Amico Ryans it could, this could be a defense that could be hitting historic type ceilings. It's that freaking good. And you even mentioned adding defensive back depth there. Totally agree. If they could work that in just to kind of injury proof themselves, right? But again, I would love to add a defensive tackle here. There's really no reason they can't do that at several different levels of the draft. So
Hmm.
even if they don't go out and get a premier defensive tackle, man, there's no reason later in the draft they can't add somebody who would boost that interior uh, tone setting because, man, everywhere else they're good. But the whole roster, I tell you, is scary as to how close it is to being
Yep.
Super Bowl heavy. I mean, it's really close. You basically need the offensive line that you mentioned, and I'll get to in just a second, and then you need a Stroud resurgence of some sort. It's not like he's bad, but he hasn't been crisp for 2 seasons now.
Hmm.
So something's got to work there in order for them to, but they are, if the Broncos can do it with Nix, I don't know why the Texans can't do it with Stroud, right? So
Yep.
be pushing on that ceiling. That's really close. The offensive line here, the only change I would make in this year's draft, I don't think there's many teams who are and should be looking to trade up. But if I were the Texans, I'm one team
Hmm.
that would be looking to trade up, and it would be to get into that realm of tackles. You mentioned there's nothing wrong with the guys you mentioned. There are guys that are going to go high in that range. But we've talked about it. There's another group sitting up there. So,
Yeah.
and again, I won't touch left right here, but if we could get somewhere up into that Lomu group, into
Yep.
that Freeling group, man, I would
Hmm.
love to put Freeling on here.
Hmm.
Who's the top guy? Malino is too far up. He won't be
Yep.
available under any scenario. If for some reason Fano were to fall, and while I don't think it will happen, it's certainly possible based on rumors and whispers, right?
Hmm.
If any of those three guys were to be sitting there maybe at 20, that's within reach.
Yeah.
And being that O line is such a desperate need here, I would jump on that to make that happen. So that's a big one for me. But then sitting there at 38, if we don't have to give up 38 as part of the trade, I love that group of guards you mentioned. That's
Hmm.
probably a sweet spot, 38 for guards.
Yep.
So if we can double dip tackle, maybe we stay at 28 and grab whatever tackle we get, and then we add in, the guard at 38. I do feel like that's a great sweet spot right there for guards. So I'm with you all the way. But Houston is like one of the few teams I would be heavily exploring trading up because our
Yeah.
roster is pretty close and tackle is such a big need right now.
Yeah, I really should have bookended the Vikings and Texans conversation with saying my main priority is trading up to 18 with the Minnesota Vikings, 28, 38, whatever else it would take. Um,
There you go. That's perfect, isn't it?
it's a weirdly constructed group, man, because they technically did enough that a lot of people have been like, they've addressed the offensive line.
Hmm.
But like they're paying 12 million bucks to a lot of people and just like that's not a number you really want to be at on your offensive line. Like maybe one guy who's a really good swing tackle, right? Who could
Yeah.
play both sides, can play 4 games at a time before like coaches see enough on film and they're like, this is how we're going to attack him and we'll draw up a perfect game plan. And then he goes back to the bench for 4 games and then I hope he's got to play 2 games on the other side. Like that's who you want to give $12 million to, not your like presumed starting right guard, but also your starting right tackle. Like that's like the bottom basement of paying veteran starters.
Okay.
And that's just
Yeah.
not and you're doing that 3 times
Yeah.
with Teller, Ingram, and Braden Smith. Now Teller's a little unique, right? 2-year deal for a guy in his 30s trying to win a Super Bowl. And like one of the years is fake. So it's really like a 1 year for 12, which is what Zeitler and Van Roten are essentially doing. But like Ingram got like a 4 for 48 or 3 for 36. Braden Smith got like a 2 for 24. So like it's
Hmm.
just It's just not, and then Arion Ursary, like a second round left tackle. Okay, that's not always what you want to do. But look, Patrick Paul, like for the Dolphins, he looked better in year two.
Right.
So like Ursary, I think has the tools. I think he could do that. Um, center, practice squad Patriot player who just knows the OC and got through the year last year and looks like he's gonna be the guy again this year. So like maybe. And then Blake Fisher failed second round pick, but like he's your swing tackle. And then Trent Brown,
Hmm.
longtime veteran, is back for $5 million. So like, okay, there's a thing there. Jarrett Patterson, a former mid round. So they have a lot of guys that have like mild investments in them. So it's like a
Right.
kind of expensive, but not overly expensive group, and a group with some names, but not a lot of talent you feel really strongly about. It's a weird offensive line. So yeah, with how good the rest of the roster might be, Houston probably could sit there and pretty confidently say we have two, four, six, seven picks. If we can take 28 and 38 and a pick next year and get 18 and 120, right? Bridge that gap from 106 to 167, something like that. Three picks for two, a pick next year, but move up 10 spots and get a Lomu or a Freeling. Um,
Yeah.
that would clean. I mean, it wouldn't clean a lot up, but it would make the group better for sure.
Yeah, it would. Listen, if I'm not trying to knock Stroud here. If they had a top 8 or 10 quarterback, a top five quarterback that was producing at a high level to go along
Mm,
with this defense, I'd feel a lot better about patchwork put together offensive line because there are capable type guys here. It's like every one of them's got some kind of a question about will they be healthy or will they be able to step up and be talented enough. So I'd love to add to that, not just for this season, which mainly for this season, but for years ahead, I'd love to really get that built back up. So, um, man, I hate to let another season go by in which the offensive line is part of the reason that we didn't push on past here.
yeah. Yeah, if only all of these like mid-tier guards were being added to, I don't know, an all-pro caliber left tackle. That would be really good for them. Anyways, the Indianapolis Colts. Picks 47, 78, 113, 156, 214, 249, 254. We made the commitment to our offense this spring by re-signing Alec Pierce and extending Daniel Jones. So now it's the defense that still needs an identity. In the first three drafts as Colts GM, Chris Ballard drafted five starting linebackers: Anthony Walker, Shaq Leonard, Zaire Franklin, Fabio Okereke, and EJ Speed. Now, none of those guys remain on the team, and there's a huge hole at linebacker. So that's going to
Hmm.
be a big need for us. That's going to be a priority. Ballard said, I want a linebacker. Well, we're gonna go find one. We also do need an edge rusher, though, to play across from first round pick Leatu Latu, who we still aren't sure if he's a number one or a number two. But at defensive tackle, we have good starters, but they're just getting older, some interesting young pieces, and then a couple other veterans at the end of the depth chart. So that's fine. We like our corners when they're healthy. Sauce Gardner, Travaris Ward, Kenny Moore, Justin Whaley, Makai Blackman, and Cam Taylor Britt. That's a good corner room. But all of those guys have dealt with injuries over the last year or two. And even with Nick Cross leaving in free agency, Cam Bynum is a solid piece at one safety spot. So with no first round pick, we have to be smart about our plan. But at 47, I'm looking at linebacker. While I think the edge rusher well is going to run dry soon after that pick, like we've been talking about, we have too big of a need at linebacker. And the group of linebackers here, we haven't talked about a lot about it tonight, but it's also just a good linebacker group, especially right here. So I want to take advantage of that, considering how much of an identity linebacker usually is for us. So CJ Allen, Anthony Hill Jr., and Jacob Rodriguez, those are our priorities at 47. If all three are gone, then we'll look at the edge rushers and then come back to linebacker at 78 with guys like Jake Golday, Kyle Lewis, and Josiah Trotter. If we get our linebacker at 47, we'll look at age at 78. Denai Dennis Sutton, Joshua Joseph, Velty Overton, Romello Height, and Kieran Crawford. Overton is especially enticing because with his size, I think he could also play a bit of defensive tackle. So considering we have some aging guys there, get a guy with a little inside outside versatility might be nice. At 113 and 156, we'll be looking at wide receiver and defensive back depth. And with the three late picks in the 200s, we'll look at the offensive and defensive lines. Ben, how do you feel about this draft plan for the Colts?
Yeah, I like it. I'm trying to pull up something else on the computer here as well, but I'll pull that back up in a second. I may just have to work off my brain, which that's not going to go too well, but we'll do the best we can. So,
What is it?
listen,
Let me look it up. Let me look. What were you looking up? I'll look it up.
linebackers at the 100 to 200 range
Okay.
in this
Yeah,
draft.
I'll get you those
That's
names.
the group, but I'll get to that in just a second. So starting off at your linebacker at the 47 or so pick, it's a good group there that you mentioned, the Anthony Hill, the C.J. Allens, the Rodriguez. They won't all three be there, but there's a very good chance one of them could be sitting there because. Man, I've talked about edge rushers moving up in this draft and wide receivers getting gone in clusters here in the first two rounds.
Yep.
We've talked about offensive tackles moving up here. Somebody's going to drop, and there's
Right.
a chance it's a very good linebacker group that kind of sort of gets pushed back a little bit, right? And that doesn't mean that people don't have a low opinion of those particular linebackers. It's just, man, we got to have a tackle. We
Right.
really can't get one later. We
Hmm.
got to have an edger. We really can't get one later. It's not even necessarily trying to premium position this thing. It's just supply and demand. We can't get them later,
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
uh, there's a chance these linebackers do slip at least one of them to 47. So I like that right there. And then the linebacker group at 100 to 200. So there's a really good cluster, most of them around the 150 range. But let me rattle off some names. It depends on which board you pull up. Aiden Fisher from Indiana, Tarian York from Texas A&M, Jack Kelly from BYU, Lander Barton from Utah. There's a kid from Arizona State whose name I can't remember at the moment.
Keyshawn
Go check
Elliott.
out the Yes, go check out the film on him and tell me that's not a guy to get excited about a starting linebacker sitting back there in the middle of your draft.
Is that the other
Um,
converted safety? Was he the other kid that was a safety early
that
in his
part I
career?
cannot remember. Yeah, so I
Mm.
apologize,
I'm gonna
but
look it up. That's
just
something I heard about someone.
yeah,
I think it was him.
thank you. I appreciate it. There's even a couple of more names I'm missing because I don't have them in front of me here.
Harold
I'll
Perkins from LSU. Maybe Deontay Lawson from Alabama. Bryce Botticher from Oregon. Caleb Alarms Orr from TCU. And then you named all the rest of them.
Yeah, but Betcher's the other one there from Oregon as well. But yeah, he'll probably end up being just a little bit later. But anyway, if that's not enough linebackers to choose from right there in the middle of that group, I don't know what is. It's a great year to be looking linebacker. There's no reason teams like the Colts. Isn't it frustrating as a GM to have drafted that many linebackers and they don't work out, or they're just not part of the team for financial reasons, one or the other, right?
Right. Because they
Gotta
all
gotta drive
started
you crazy.
at least, they all spent at least 2 years as a starter for them. And like Anthony
Yeah,
Walker's bounced around, but he's a guy that starts for a year for one team and then goes to another team and starts. Shaq Leonard, obviously, all the injuries completely derailed his
yeah,
career. But Zaire Franklin, that was their guy for a long. He was the one that stuck around.
right.
Bobby Okereke stuck for a while, but he was a long time starter for the Giants. EJ Speed
Yep.
stuck with them for 2 years once everyone else kind of filtered out. Went and was essentially a starter for the Texans last year and is now somewhere else. He ended up somewhere else, but yeah, like 3 years, just bang bang. This would be me drafting offensive line. Like I would just hit it hard for a few years and love those guys, and then eventually they all filter out one reason or another, and you're like, all right, time to start over.
It's a beautiful group. Now I'll tell you, Perkins and Lewis from Pittsburgh. If you like smaller guys who are faster and make
Mm,
plays, but may not hold up over the course of a season in terms of collecting 800 to 1,000 snaps, that's your guys. But that whole other group I mentioned sitting there at 150, pick 150, give or take, right? Give or take 30 picks.
yeah,
That's a group right there that they have size, they can hit, they are smart. They are green dot guys that should be able to eat up a lot of snaps. I mean, the whole freaking group right there. So they're not standout athletic people, but they hold up athletically, right? Man, if you're looking for guys like that, there's no reason you couldn't even add two of them, to be honest. Although most teams aren't going to do that. So it wouldn't bother me if the Colts, grabbed an athletic guy at 47 and then double dipped for a more of a captain of the team, green dot
Hmm.
kind of a guy back there at 150 level, wherever they're at 156. So yeah, that's a great thing to do right there. And then the other positions you mentioned are just fine. But the linebacker thing really did stand out there for all the reasons you mentioned.
Yeah, and like I mean, I even think that like that difference that you're talking about, you can pick your flavor at 47 with those guys. Like Anthony
Hmm.
Hill is just your like point and shoot run and now he's very the thing I like about his IQ is I think he's really good at like sifting through the trash in the run game. Like even though he's much bigger than CJ Allen, if you watch him back to back, you're like Anthony Hill's like a 6'4" old school buck linebacker, and he's just not. He gets eaten up by blocks too, but he's very good at sifting through the trash. And so once the play's happening, the IQ is there. Um,
Yeah.
but CJ Allen is a little bit of both. Jacob Rodriguez is not the same athlete or size as those guys, but very instinctual. So you can get across the spectrum of what they're gonna look for there. And then with this next group, we'll talk about a guy that I like that's completely the the other way. But yeah, there's a lot of flavors at linebacker, and it just feels like with all the names, all the talent they have on the front and on the back end, if they really need to get that identity going, like think about it, Lou Anarumo is the defensive coordinator with those Bengals teams, when he had that 2, 3 year window and they were pretty good, who was setting the identity? It was Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson in the middle, right? Yeah, they had some, Trey Hendrickson getting the sacks, um, Jesse Bates for a little bit there, but then, just some young corners flying around, Mike Hilton in the slot. But Wilson and Pratt were the guys messing things up in the middle, and yeah, I think they're going to want to do that there at 47.
Yeah, it's a great
Anything
point.
anything else in the
It's hard
Colts?
to get off the linebacker conversation here because
Yeah,
man, months ago we hit linebackers pretty hard and they've kind of faded from
yeah,
conversation, right? Which I totally understand.
yeah.
Grabbing CJ Allen, who's not big, but
Hmm.
athletic and tough,
Hmm.
good against the run. And I think he can hold up decent in pass coverage and
Hmm.
can develop further. That would be one half of the linebacking core right there. And then the other part, getting to work out at 150. If you go back and grab a little bit bigger linebacker who's
Yeah.
got the green dot captain size, would be beautiful for that defense. I really like that. And then you mentioned LT Overton in there as well
Mm.
for edger purposes. Totally agree.
All right. Our final team, the final team of the war room, the Jacksonville Jaguars picks 56, 81, 88, 100, 124, 164, 166, 203, 233, 240, and 245. What a year. What a year. Our GM and head coach pairing really turned things around last season to the point that our splashy first round pick had very little impact on winning, if you really think about it. And we still had a great year. With Travis Hunter moving his primary focus to cornerback, things are starting to take shape in this Liam Cohen era. And we are going to talk more in depth about Travis Hunter switching. But for now, let's focus on the draft plan.
Yeah.
Travis Achan is gone from the offense, but we planned for that last year with the Bashal Tutin draft pick. Defensively, starters Andrew Wingard, Greg Newsome, and Devin Lloyd all left in free agency as well. The Tyson Campbell for Greg Newsome's WAP allowed us to open a starting outside corner spot for Hunter because Newsome was scheduled to be a free agent this year, whereas Campbell was under contract. Um, and that's where we think Hunter has the highest ceiling and most potential impact on our room for this season, at least. Since Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas Jr., and Parker Washington all shaped up to be a solid wide receiver trio last year, that was the decision making for that move. Our biggest hole in the starting lineup is at linebacker with Lloyd being gone. My favorite pick we could make here at 56 would be Jake Golday out of Cincinnati. He's the perfect big athletic run and hit linebacker to play next to Foye Oluokun, who's the green dot, calling things out, telling everybody where to be. Anthony Hill and Josiah Trotter and Jacob Rodriguez are also all options as linebackers that are in this range that we've talked about. But Gold Day being 6'4", long arms,
Yeah.
fast, and can hit, not very
Hmm.
instinctual. He'll stick his face in the fan as a run defender coming downhill. He's not super effective at it, but he's at least getting in there and making plays. But I could just see, just like Devin Lloyd early in his career, Oluokun still there doing it, being like, "Hey man, run that way," and Jake Olday's gonna be like, "Yes sir," and just like, phew, get over there and wreck somebody. Um, Let's see. The defense also needs depth up front and in the backfield. So three more picks between 81 and 100. We'll be looking at defense, DT, edge, safety, and corner. A few names across these positions I like. We've talked about already: Grayson Holton, Daryl Jackson Jr., Joshua Josephs, Malik Muhammad, Bud Clark. On day three, we have picks 124, 164, and 166. We'll use those on the remaining positions we didn't take in the top 100. Plus, look at some O-line depth and grab one of those tight ends that everyone's all excited about right now. We also have four picks in the 200s. That would give us 11 picks in total, and I'm happy to use them all. But I'm also interested in using those picks to try to move up a bit. It probably won't amount to much, but if 203 and 233 could get us from 124 to, let's say, 105 for a player we really like, I would do it. Like if that was like the tight end, right? If there's a tight end run happening at the end of day two, right? When we get to our pick 100, but we want to go with a corner there. But we're like, man, a lot of tight ends just went in the 90s, and we don't think the one we're gonna like is gonna last to 124. At the end of day two, at the end of Friday night, we'll call around and be like, hey, 124 with how many of these seventh rounders do we need to go get Oscar Delp or Michael Trigg or whoever? Um, Overall, we're very happy with where the roster is at. The offensive line actually has a lot of options for 2026, but we'll be sure to take someone on day three to add to the hopper because there are several guys that are going to be up for free agency pretty soon. We have our QB, our running back, our wide receivers, and a tight end, at least for this year, because Brenton Strange is also a free agent after 2026, hence the draft pick. We have edge rushers, we have corners, we have defensive tackles, and one linebacker. This draft is all about depth and then complementary pieces to those cornerstones that we already have the roster filled with. So Ben, what do you think about this final draft plan? And this one here for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, the plan is good. Now, there's actually three player names you mentioned that I just love the fit for Jacksonville. I'll get to them in just a second. But let me start with your top one, Jake Golday out of Cincinnati. Whether he goes here or whether he goes somewhere else, somebody's going to be very happy that they got a very big, strong man who can move fast down to get pressure on the quarterback. He
Hmm.
does. It's not like he has moves, but you
Right.
talk about a guy that can get on the quarterback quick if he's sitting out there at linebacker and just kind of red dogs it right. He can
Mm.
get there quick, but also a guy who played a lot of zone coverage
Yeah.
in college. It's a ton of it. You're right about his instincts. They're not the greatest. People can slip in behind him. He's not
Yep.
always the most aware, but even so, very big, very strong, got the good speed and moves around really well, and certainly can spot drop coverage very
Hmm.
well and take away these areas, right?
Yeah.
So whether Jaysville gets him or somebody else, somebody's gonna really love getting Golday here. The names that I really liked that you mentioned here were Michael Trigg, the tight end. I think that would be a fantastic
Yeah.
ad for Jacksonville. I He's got a ton of talent. It's red flag things
Yep.
that are holding him back. Most of those happened at a different school, and most of those happened more in like 23 and 24.
Hmm.
The incident that happened, I think it's what, September, October of 25, most people blamed that on the athletic director who thence got fired, you know. So
Mm.
I hate to lay that at the feet of Trigg, but even so, there are admittedly red flag concerns that are pulling him down. But man, being able to add a talent like that to Jacksonville would be fantastic. Malik Muhammad, corner that you mentioned there as part of that group, would be a fantastic add. He's got the athleticism. I don't know that he's got that pure stickiness to him as far as super tight one-on-one coverage, but he's certainly got the athleticism to challenge and make it difficult. I think that would be a great fit. And there was one more name that you mentioned right here. Grayson Halton, I think, would be out of Oklahoma
Mm.
defensive
Hmm.
tackle. Would also be a great fit right there in the middle for Jacksonville. So those were three names, man. You're not gonna get them all, but in any of those names there, I thought would just be beautiful fits for what Jacksonville wants to do.
Holton's a fun player. I really enjoyed watching him. And yeah,
Yeah.
Golday, like he's not done. He's not like a golden retriever out there just running. He knows how to use his length and athleticism to make up for the fact that he's not Jacob Rodriguez out there who just like, yeah, feels
Right.
stuff that's happening around him. And you said it, he did it so much. I mean, he's like lined up as the slot corner essentially. And then he
Yeah.
just drops into being a middle
Right.
linebacker once. But when he starts, like the play starts and you go to find him, you're looking at the middle of the field for the 6'4" linebacker. And it's like, no, he's the giant guy
He's not
covering the
there.
5'10" slot wide receiver, you know? Um, but then, yeah, he gets out there and he's moving around and stuff. And yeah, it's not, and like it even looks good because he is
Right.
athletic, because he's a natural mover, because he's got experience doing it. He just doesn't have the feel to, and like that's, Devin Lloyd didn't have the feel either. And then he got better at it and better at it. And he's not, he didn't win all pro this year or make all pro this year because he's a great coverage linebacker. He's just a very good all around linebacker. And I
Hmm.
could see something similar for Gold Day.
Yeah.
All right. That's the end of the war room, but let's stick with Jacksonville for a minute and talk about Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
What are your takeaways from Travis Hunter kind of switching over to be a primary corner this year? And then from a draft perspective, like thinking about Jacksonville moved up, spent a first round pick and some other additional draft picks to get him to go from 5 to 2 to get Travis Hunter. Um, how do you feel like what do you think that says about the experiment to try and trade up for this guy to play both sides and how it all went down in his rookie year?
It, when you trade up, you're certainly kind of sort of hoping for more than that, right? You're hoping
Hmm.
this guy can kill it on one side of the football and also do some fun stuff on the other side, right?
Hmm.
Which is incredibly rare at the NFL level. Goodness gracious, it is. Those are unicorns, and I mean golden unicorns with
Two horns. Yeah.
with yes, with two
Is that a
horns
different? Would that be a
exactly.
different thing?
But
Unicorn
probably
with
yes.
a bicorn? Whatever. All right. Delete.
There's a
I'll think
reason
about that.
that so rarely happens is because even if you have the athleticism, you've also got to have a certain amount of stamina. You've got to have a certain amount of just insane ability to pick up things at this highly processed NFL level. And it's not to say that it can't happen in the future. It's just for now that's what they've decided to do. So there's no question about it. The hype for him and the trade up for him would be with the mindset, hey, he can do things on both sides. Maybe he's an 80-20 player, 80% one
Hmm.
side, 20% on the other. It's just, man, it's so hard to do. So that part of it hasn't worked out. Now, at a certain point, it's kind of like the adults in the room have to take over, and that's Liam Cohen basically. But that entire coaching staff have to be like, hey, based on what we saw year one, where's he going to help us the most? It's right here. So let's focus in on that. Let's get him settled in on that, and then if everything's working out, maybe we can start cooking him up a few offensive
Right.
packages here. So it's mildly disappointing based on the trade up, right? That's
Yeah.
that's not what you were hoping for, but still, that's not to say he can't be the tremendous player. So it's the reality of NFL life, man. It is so freaking hard to do. That's why, man, these are some of the greatest athletes in the world, and by the time you mix in their physical toughness and their mental toughness, boy, they're just right there at the peak with other athletes around the world. And still, it is hard for somebody to do this. So, that's life in the NFL.
So when I saw this, my initial reaction was kind of what was happening throughout the season, right? Where it was Parker Washington's playing more than Hunter and he's playing well. Brian Thomas Jr. has his ups and downs through the year, and then they trade for Jacoby Myers, and it's like, ooh, well, this is done, right? This experiment is just over. And then you
Hmm.
start seeing some of the reporting digging into the quote from Gladstone, the GM, and then you actually see the video surface. And it is truly like I don't have the exact quote, but it was basically like he's going to shift the majority of his focus to corner now. So the phrase we kept hearing last year was like major in one thing, minor in the other, right? To do both.
Hmm.
And you look, and he only played in 7 games last year, but it's clean how it kind of worked out, actually. He played two-thirds of the available offensive snaps in the games he played, and one-third of the available defensive snaps across the games he played. So that makes,
Wow.
a whole, right? That makes a one. Um,
Yes.
but now it's like, okay, if just on the surface level we hear what Gladstone's saying, and now it's going to be two-thirds defense, one-third offense. Now that's very literal. I don't think that's going to be it. I do think, and based on what they did in the offseason so far, I think it supports. He's the starting outside corner. And then, like you said, we'll sprinkle in as much offense as makes sense. I think even the report said like he could have 10 to 12 specialty package plays a game, right? My first thought was
Yeah.
also like, can you make him a returner? Like, if you want to take advantage of that skill set of him having the ball in his hands,
Hmm.
but you don't want to put him on offense, make him a weapon in the return game with the way the return game works now. Um, but then as I was thinking about it and everyone was freaking out about the trade and oh, this abject failure, even though I always said last year through the process, I think you'd be an all pro corner. I would put him there first. And at the end of the day, if you get an all pro corner and you trade it up, yeah, you probably didn't want to trade two first round picks for an all pro corner, but like whatever,
Right.
we're here. You got him. He's an all pro corner. It is what it is. That's not the worst outcome. But then I was thinking, what if it's not the flexibility and ability to play both sides all the time every year? That's enticing because, yeah, like you said, that's probably just not possible now. But what if it's year to year? This is a guy that can be an all pro corner or let's say a Pro Bowl wide receiver. And it just depends on where your roster is.
Hmm.
Gladstone and Cohen can walk into every offseason and evaluate their entire roster. They can say, okay, here's where we ended the year. Here's our free agents. Here's the strengths and weaknesses of this upcoming draft. Where do we want to play Hunter next year? That sounds pretty freaking valuable. That's pretty cool to
Right.
have a player who can play both positions. And even if it's never going to be 90% of the snaps on both sides of the ball every year, but that flexibility to say, oh, this year we need him at receiver. All right, here we go. Let's put him at
Yeah.
receiver. Or think about when the Patriots had, was it Troy Brown? Troy Branch? Now I'm gonna sound like I'm not as old as I am that I can't think of this, that I can't say this. Played basketball against this guy at one point, actually. That's another story. Um, and I don't remember all of the times, but yeah, the guy that like throughout his career was a wide receiver, was a cornerback, vice versa, and then just like, oop, here's the playoffs. Get out there, man. You're not coming out. You're not coming off the field. Um,
Right.
a comparison I'm more ready to make right now. Denzel Washington, remember the Titans when he just reads the list of the top eight actors, I mean top eight players from Remember the Titans, and said, "You're playing both ways. You're not coming off the field." And he's got his quarterback playing corner because he's like, I just need the best players out on the field at all times.
Yep.
If Jacksonville's going to have that kind of flexibility with Hunter, that's still more valuable than just a really good player on one side, and it's different than what we thought. But I just thought I thought that was interesting. Just like, all right, this year, Hunter, where do we need you? All right, you're gonna be receiver. Oh, we kept Brian Thomas Jr. for year three, but we didn't pick up his fifth year option, and we traded him. We need you back, and we uh, who'd you like? Muhammad. We took Malik Muhammad at pick 88,
Hmm.
and he was really
Yeah.
freaking good. So Hunter, for 2027, we're sticking you back at receiver full time. I think that's pretty cool.
The flexibility has a tremendous amount of value. We see that on offensive line where we talk about guys who are
Hmm.
able to move around. We see that in the defensive backfield where we talk about guys that are able to move around. We see that on the defensive line where we talk about guys that can play edge but can scoot to the interior. We see that in baseball where flexibility is huge, guys being able to move around. You see that in other sports as well. It's just so rare to see it on both sides of the football at the NFL level.
Right.
The one thing that is going to keep making it challenging, and that's why I was so pessimistic about it, hey, just a few minutes ago, I mean, is in order for it to truly work and be productive at the NFL level, the being on both sides of the football, he's kind of sort of got to be a better athlete than the people he's going up against.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's really hard to do. He's an amazing athlete,
Yeah.
but to be better than the guys he's lining up across from, It's not going to happen that often, to be honest. You know, the
Hmm.
defensive backs he's going up against at the NFL level are all as fast as he is, right?
Yep. Yep.
Some of them are as tall, not all of them. But you know, when it flips over to him covering people, well, all these wide receivers can run too, and a lot of them are tall, right? So
Hmm.
that athletic advantage that he possessed in college that allowed him to do it shrinks, which means now he's got to get back to learning his footwork and
Yeah.
crisping up his catching and his
Yep.
routes and his coverage skills. It is difficult to do. So
All right, because we can't end on just such a cool player, I will say in terms of other flexible players on the Jaguars, I mocked Jordan Farmer to them in that 3 round mock, but you know who I forgot they have sitting there just waiting for his opportunity? Wyatt Milam, West Virginia, converted tackle
yes,
to guard, and we liked him last year,
absolutely,
man. And Ezra
absolutely,
Cleveland is in the last year of his deal. Patrick McCarry is they can save like 13 million in 2027 if they move on from him. Wyatt Milam, baby. Might be time for what we saw them move on from bench Walker Little and give Cole Van Lannon a random 3 year contract or whatever. Wyatt Milam. It's coming. It's gonna
yeah,
happen.
I agree. I would love.
All right.
I would expect him to get a chance at that for sure.
All right, there we go. We ended on Wyatt Milam. That felt better than Travis Hunter, whatever. All right, that's gonna do it. The NFL Draft War Room Series, presented by Box Score Network with Ben and Simon. Also, Pro Football Enterprises, Simon and Friends podcast, the Simon and Friends podcast. Um, Hopefully you all are listening and watching. We have appreciated everybody on whatever network, whatever show, whatever channel, being here through the draft season. Quick programming note for this is coming out on Thursday on the Simon and Friends pod, the first edition Friday, and then Monday on Box Score Network. We're gonna have stuff for you all week of the draft. So this war room discussion, other draft conversations between me and Ben are gonna be in places. Make sure you check that out. We'll have a full 2 round mock coming out on Tuesday or Wednesday before the draft. I keep forgetting. And then mine and Ben's annual over under first round preview of the draft. And then Ben and I will be back Thursday night right after first round. We're going to react to that. That'll go up Friday morning. And then sometime the following week, we'll have big picture draft recap stuff
Yeah,
across the network and across the show. So all draft all the time, Ben. We will continue for this next week to be ready to prepare and react and analyze and report back to everybody. And thank you for all your work, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you to everybody listening and watching, wherever, however you're doing that. And we will talk to you again soon. So, everybody, thank you. Have fun and be safe out there.